Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar today. I'm your host, Scott Benedict. I'm the VP of Partnerships at WhyteSpyder here in Northwest Arkansas. And I'm excited about our topic today. We're going to talk about the disruptive forces taking place throughout the ecosystem of retailing today, how convenience, the shopping experience, and personalization technology are all impacting our industry and the customer experience. Well, it's a pretty big topic, so that's why we're going to devote a full hour, a full 60 minutes to our webinar today. Now, as you're logging on and as you're joining us, if you've got any questions throughout our time together today, if you'll drop those questions either into the question box here on Zoom, or if you're joining us via LinkedIn, if you'll ask your questions there, we'll certainly do our best to integrate your questions into our discussion with our panelists today. And speaking of our panelists, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues and my fellow panelists for our event today. I'll start first with Bradford Giles. Brad is the Senior VP of Marketing and Sales Enablement at Ingenico, a global leader in the payment solutions space. Brad, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're also joined by Sudhakar Potineni. He is not only a recognized global retail leader, but the former head of digital growth initiatives at The Gap. So Sudhakar, welcome to you as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And DeAnn Campbell joins us. She is a top retail influencer and the head of retail strategy and insights at AAG Consulting in Atlanta. And DeAnn, welcome to you as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And in fact, DeAnn, I'm going to come to you first to kind of get the ball rolling and maybe start a little bit at a high level, at an overview, if you will. It's widely known that the pandemic resulted in a lot of changes, both short-term and long-term in our industry. From the perspective of the way 2023 is kind of unfolding so far, what in your view has kind of been the biggest change and perhaps the most pertinent change facing our industry as we continue to come out of the pandemic era?
Ooh, starting with an easy one. I think two lasting things came out of the pandemic. Firstly, we were given a big reminder on the importance of brick and mortar. Up until 2019, even the retail industry had really focused their investment and innovation on e-commerce because it was expected to become the primary shopping channel. And COVID was just going to lock this behavior in. But shoppers decided otherwise, as they often do. Last year, 2 years post-COVID, Walmart still saw double the traffic in their stores as they did online. And this has forced a lot of retailers to make a mid-stride pivot in their business strategies and their budgets. The second factor impacting retail is really where people shop. Despite employers trying to get us all back in the office, the reality is that hybrid work, at the very least, is here to stay. And remote work is changing the face of almost every industry, but especially retail. So not only in what we buy, but in wanting to stay closer to home. And this is making retailers change how they approach brick and mortar, more shop and shops, more partnerships, and not just in big footprints like Target, but with smaller stores like Sephora and Kohl's and Birchbox and Walgreens. And this change is to get their products deeper inside of neighborhoods. So this is impacting store formats, leasing strategies, merchandising plans, supply chains, marketing. It's really a rethink of the entire retail business model.
Interesting. Brad, why don't you weigh in your thoughts? I know you're involved in the payment space, and I can imagine that how retailers serve customers throughout the customer experience, including through payments, has probably evolved a lot in a post-pandemic world, has it not?
Quite a bit. What we're seeing more and more of is consumers are now more expecting a more hybrid online in-store experience when they're in store. I think when we were all in our homes with the pandemic and ordering everything online, we got used to the benefits of ordering online, recommendations, interactions, easy navigation. And oftentimes when you're in a store, you don't have that available to you. Technology today allows stores to bring that online experience in store for the consumer. And we're seeing a definite uptick in in-store mobility requests from merchants of all sizes across all markets, where they're looking to do more with the consumer in the aisle to emulate more of an online shopping experience when they're physically in the store.
Interesting. Sudhakar, weigh in on your thoughts. I know from your background, you've probably seen a lot of evolution in how the retail experience is being played both online and in physical stores. What are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I think I mean I agree with DeAnn and Brad there, but I think the one thing that kind of resonated with me is like the shift and the acceleration of these omnichannel experiences, right? And the contactless experiences, whether it's the curbside, the buy online, pick up in store, and how like the in-store experiences have evolved to kind of enable this truly omnichannel experiences. I think that's something that has kind of we have seen an acceleration during the pandemic, and that's continued to stick from a consumer behavior, especially in like the grocery side of things, like like when I drive by, you can drive by to any Target or Walmart like without like when you see up and center like this the designated parking spots for curbside pickup, or like kind of figuring out like how do they orient the store, how do they staff the store to kind of enable those experiences. I think that's one thing. The other thing that I was reading up actually, and that was like during the COVID, like consumers were exposed to like situations where like their favorite brands, whether it's because of supply chain delays or like not having a true omnichannel experiences, they had the they were more prone to kind of shifting brand loyalties, right? So I think and they were willing to try different brands. So I think from a consumer perspective, the barrier to kind of switch brands has kind of also is different now since pandemic, and like and I think that's where like I think you see from a retailer perspective kind of truly figuring out like how do you build those loyalty and engagement programs that can truly engage consumers. I think that's kind of other thing that that comes to mind here. So yeah, that's how I would characterize that.
Yeah,
it's interesting, Sudhakar, what you had said on that. And one thing that became really prevalent that we saw at NRF was we often look to the bigger retail brands for where the industry is headed. And you had mentioned a few of them. And I think what a lot of mid-size and smaller retailers haven't fully grasped yet is a lot of this technology is now available through the cloud. And the ability for smaller and smaller retailers to be able to bring that kind of larger store experience into the smaller store is there today. And the ability to be able to take that and integrate it into systems, yes, it takes a little work, but it's doable. It's doable today for the smaller retailers. And I think as that segment of the market starts to embrace that, and they will, we'll see even a faster shift of consumer expectations across the board, because now they'll be expecting that experience everywhere they shop, not just the larger, more well-known stores.
I think you're absolutely right. And in the expectation that there's going to be a brick and mortar representation somehow, somewhere is really going to ramp up. Even something like Glam Squad, that is, they do blowouts and it's a digital online business. You call them up, they come to your home, they do your hair, but they're creating a presence inside of CVS because customers are really expecting to have that presence.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And it certainly feels like that there is an integration of not only technology, but in the physical store experience, the design of some locations, we certainly saw not only in the grocery space, but in a lot of other retail formats, perhaps particularly in mall-based formats, where the physical design of the store or the facility wasn't maybe the best it could be in terms of enabling store pickup, and retailers had to innovate with service and kind of work their way through if their physical store design didn't make it easy or a smooth experience to serve a store pickup order, particularly during the darkest days of the pandemic, where coming inside a physical store was maybe not either wise or practical. And Brad, I want to come back to you and kind of, if you step back and look at the retailers that didn't make it through the pandemic, some that failed or are failing today, versus those, and we can think a lot of them that have actually prospered during and after the pandemic. Is there some kind of magic element or magic formula or investments that those that have excelled, perhaps you've seen that they're really focused on, versus some, Party City might be an example, others that have maybe more focus on physical stores and don't have an online presence, where those there's maybe best practices that the audience can share from folks who did it right and have prospered versus folks who perhaps didn't and either are struggling or failed coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of data on, and to touch on what you had just said about stores not being physically set up for the new world. There's a lot of data and research out there on how more and more store organizations are starting to rethink their floor space. And with that floor space, they're looking to gain real estate back so that they don't have their employees with big shopping carts bumping into consumers in aisle, right? That they're able to do that behind a wall or a curtain or, you know, out of the view. And they're also looking for ways to gain floor space in the front of the store, you know, with the typical, you know, 4, 8, 6, 10, 15 checkout stations. There's a lot of expensive real estate there that could be used for other purposes. So one of the things that we're seeing the retail organizations that are excelling versus the ones that aren't quite excelling are, first, that use of the floor space more effectively. Second is finding ways to engage the consumer in store in unique ways and in more personal ways. One of the challenges with that, and I'm sure everyone on this call who has associates working in their store has felt this, finding qualified associates who can interact with a consumer effectively, it's not an easy thing to do. And what we're seeing is the organizations that put real energy into that and have a real process and a methodology that they go through. So when they're hiring store associates, they're bringing in people they know will provide a good experience to their customer. Those stores we typically see excelling more than those that are just looking to fill head count and, you know, put a body in the store because they need to put 3 bodies in an aisle every day between a certain time. You're almost better off having 1 strong associate than 2 not as strong associates, right? And, you know, there's reasoning and methodology and math that you can put behind that to make that work. So some of it is technical, some of it is operational, and some of it is personal.
I think that's a great point, Brad. I was in Dillard's doing a little research and I ordered something online to go pick it up in the store. And I had instructions come to me in an email that seemed kind of odd. And it was telling me how to get to the pickup counter. You take the escalator to the 3rd floor, you take a left, you take a right, you look for the gift wrap counter, and that's where it is. Right. And it just seems like I know the company is struggling a little, and in part it's because they're just trying to take a necessary function and cram it in where they have extra space, rather than doing the hard work of redesigning the layouts to put it where it really belongs and where it will do them the most good.
Yeah, great example. And I know exactly what you're talking about. That's a great example.
Yeah, I had the opportunity, we'll call it, of being in Texas during the darkest days of the pandemic, and HEB, one of the more respected grocery retailers in that part of the country, talked very openly about how they had to lean in to training of their associates, right to the point that you are making. And part of that was based on what had really been holding up adoption of buy online, pickup in a store in the grocery space, it seemed like, has been the idea of someone else picking out your fresh vegetables or fruit, or making some of those other individual purchase decisions for you. And they tried to address that head on with we've trained our people to pick out the best fruit, the vegetables that is fresh, it's not past its date, or things like that. And that's kind of an indicator of the broader context, I think, of what you both were talking about, is both the physical facility and the store associates training and expertise on how to serve a customer in that environment's pretty important. Sudhakar, your thoughts on that?
I agree with DeAnn and Brad there, but I think I have slightly, I mean, like, since you mentioned Party City there, I was thinking, like, how much the assortment kind of plays into, like, how the success of these retailers, like post-pandemic especially, right? Like, as the shopping patterns have changed, are consumers for certain assortment more willing to kind of, just order it online, and like the Amazons of the world or the marketplaces of the world, and get them, right? Versus, and I think like, if in our previous topic too, we were discussing about store-in-store format too, right? So our, like, one thing that's kind of emerging is also, like, post-pandemic, consumers are kind of have reduced, like, the number of trips they are making, and, like, the frequency is kind of doing. So are they getting more used to places like where, like, they can get a multitude of things, like whether it's the I know now no longer like Target and like Ulta Beauty, or like JC Penney and Target and CVS, and, like, so I think that also, that so broadly, I think the assortment also plays into, like, what's happening post pandemic in terms of what retailers are being successful there.
Interesting. That's I've seen our first question come up, so let me kind of see if we can address this. And the question is specifically regarding the building materials part of retail, so I'm going to assume that's the home improvement. And the question for the panel is what are your thoughts on the building materials, I'm going to assume the home improvement retail business? Will their omni approach kind of work there? And it's interesting. I was just in a Lowe's location recently, in which some new signage appeared that allowed a consumer to use the camera in their phone as a direct link to some additional services on Lowe's app. And I offer that as an example. But panel, what do you think in terms of that particular format, either as a best practice or perhaps where they've got some shortcomings in the area of omnichannel experience? What do y'all think?
Well, Omnichannel is really the best friend of home goods, furniture, things like that. Because when you think about it, if you're going in, and I'm working on my home right now, so I'm very familiar with this space, where I needed to buy 30 bags of mulch for my garden, and but I wanted to just double check the color of it, because I needed to match some existing mulch that I bought, and I just wanted to run out and take a look at it. So being able to go and view what it looks like, maybe even seeing it in context, having it laid out in a nice way around a mock-up garden bench or something, would really be a great way for me to understand the product, and then give me a tool so I can order it to have it delivered to my house, or order it to have it loaded into my car in the parking lot. Make it very easy for me, so I'm not loading up my shopping cart with 30 bags of mulch, and 50 pounds later I'm hauling it out. I think pretty much with any type of product, including building materials, customers really need to test the quality and see it in person, be able to touch it, Does it look like real brick? I know it's not real brick, but how fake does it look? Am I going to hate it? Do the colors match? Being able to try it out in person, being able to understand how much you have to buy, getting help with digital tools to figure out quantities, to figure out how easy is it to install? How hard is it? Can I do it myself? Can I watch a video to see somebody and just kind of get a general sense that, yeah, I think I can figure that out myself, or have a way to get in touch with professionals to help me install, to help me buy it, and to help me install it. That's a marriage made in heaven for Omnichannel in building materials, I think.
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, right? So I think so as a new homeowner, like relatively new homeowner, I've been kind of experimenting with DIY stuff, right? So, and that's where, like, even when I go figure out like what I need to kind of do a project and being able to kind of visualize it and like the step-by-step instructions of the videos to kind of that go along to how to use the product or like how do I kind of complete the project, I think that's a game changer in basically building out these experiences, especially in the home building, like, DIY side of things. And I think I've seen some videos on Home Depot that they have done a good job of kind of at least explaining the tool sets out of things and stuff. But I think the opportunities are immense in this particular space.
Well, and when you look at, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
No, I'm sorry. When you look at Best Buy, for example, they don't maximize Omnichannel very well, and they don't help customers put sets of things together very well. I went in and I was going to buy a smart light bulb, but I didn't realize you need a thing to plug into your fuse box, you need a thing to plug into your wall outlet, you need all these different things. They didn't tell me that. They just had the product sitting on a shelf. So there's a real missed opportunity to help people buy multiple products by understanding the full range of what they need to really have the experience, not just the product.
Yeah, I grew up in the consumer electronics industry, DeAnn, and I can completely relate. One of the things that was taught to us from the earliest days of my career was this concept of solution selling. And while it's certainly important in the technology of the electronic space, the home improvement space, in grocery, in apparel, there's so many verticals within retail to where a digital experience and a physical store experience should be able to work together to not only satisfy a customer's order, but to perhaps facilitate a solution in the way that you were talking about, in many cases, helping a consumer to understand all the pieces that have to go together to solve a problem for them. And it feels like as far as we have come, Brad, we haven't completely maybe mastered that whole solution. Would you agree?
There's always room for improvement. We've come a long way, but I think what we're going to see, data is going to continue to play a bigger role in how retailers of all size make decisions. AI, we're all still kind of looking at AI and trying to figure out how are we going to use this on the consumer side of the business internally. Larger retailers who have a lot of data to work with see the benefits of AI. When you look at the consumer facing side of it, there's just challenges because of confidentiality and data privacy and the things you need to be cognizant of. So there's opportunity there. There's work to be done. I'm going to say this multiple times throughout this discussion. We just can't lose sight of the in-store, the people that are talking to your customers. And I've just seen time and time again where that has not been seen as a priority. And it's caused challenges for retailers, even, in some instances, lost customers. There is one other comment I want to make too about the home improvement store. Interesting, it's happening on the B2B side too. At Ingenico, we do a lot of business in that space, both at the big box level and at the smaller regional store level. And we've had more and more conversations with these organizations about how to improve an omnichannel scenario. And we were a bit surprised when we learned most of it was not around the consumer, it was around the contractor. in how to provide more online services and online ordering and automation to the contractor. And we were a little surprised by those questions because we weren't expecting those. Well, lo and behold, I live in an older home. I'm having a bunch of work done outside, painting, and a bunch of the siding needs to be replaced. So the contractor comes out, he marks everything up, and he said, I'll have an estimate. And we had agreed to it. And he said, okay, I'll kind of write it all up now. He comes back in a few minutes later. He said, okay, everything's all ordered. It will be here in 3 days. I'll start the following Tuesday. While he was in my driveway, he went to whoever he bought it from. He picked out everything he needed, siding, boards, nails, paint, everything. And it all delivered in one shipment to my house 3 days later. He showed up a week later and did the work. So wow. That's a great example, I think, of bringing in-store and online together in the B2B space.
Yeah, that's an outstanding example, and it touches on kind of where I was going to go next. And Sudhakar, I want to come to you with this question. It aligns with a question we've gotten from one of our attendees, which is talking about this whole concept of the consumer experience not being as good as it perhaps it has been. While we certainly are seeing technology innovations in those enabling a wonderful experience, Brad, like the one you just articulated. But Sudhakar, one of the most important elements of kind of the experiential in-store visit feels like making that experience memorable, making it very easy to get everything that a customer needs, but not being either annoying or intrusive by coming across as knowing too much about the consumer. This is where personalization becomes potentially a hindrance instead of a help if someone perceives that perhaps a little too much about me. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts in terms of how kind of retailers find that right mix of using data and information about a consumer's preferences with the in-store experience to make it maybe a more exciting, delighting, enjoyable experience for consumers? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, I think there are, when it comes to experiential in-store, like really good experiential in-store experiences, like I think there are 3 dimensions that are really important. One, in my perspective, is like authenticity, immersiveness, and personalized experiences, right? So, and if you look at like all these 3 dimensions, at the end of the day, when I'm in the store, the brand or the retail, like the values of the brand should kind of flow through like that particular experience. I think when I think of the authentic experience there, Trader Joe's comes to mind. Like if you're shopped at Trader Joe's, like they keep the assortment very simple. They're focused on the price and the delivering value to the consumer. And I think Brad made a point earlier on, like the importance of associates, and like I think they do a great job of like making sure that they're having the right people like who are representing and who are knowledgeable and stuff too. So I think so authenticity kind of tops like and when you're in brands and retailers like Trader Joe's, that comes to mind. The other thing is also like, Apple is the other example, like simplicity is there, one of the values there, like when you walk into the store, like it kind of, you feel it like as you experience the store there. The second thing is around immersiveness, right? So how can brands create an immersive experience where you are able to actually experience the product? I mean, we just got off the topic of like home improvement, like, but when you think of like IKEA, right? So when you, right from the moment you walk into the store, it's an immersive experience. You can visualize yourself being in that living room, being in that bedroom, or being in that dining room, and like how the product comes to life in those particular spaces. And I think, not only the in-store experience, I think they have done a wonderful job of like, complementing, leveraging the technology to create a truly omni experience. Like I said, like I'm a new home buyer, like, and I was looking at few, things in my room, and like the app that they have, like they have leveraged the AR, augmented reality technologies in a way where like you can now create a 3D visualization of your room and kind of, and put the piece into it, see how it looks, and and kind of erase things and be able to kind of order from the app right from there and then. So I think they have truly kind of created an immersive experience both in store and figured out a way to kind of complement that with like leveraging technologies like AR and app to bring it to life more. And the third aspect is personalization. I know you touched on this, but I think it spans the spectrum when it comes to personalization in store. Like it could be as simple as like being able to recognize that I'm a tiered loyalty member, like whether I'm at the point of sale or like when I'm speaking with an associate, being able to kind of recognize that and being able to recognize my name. And to all the way at the other end of the spectrum, like when you think of the Nike Plus at the Nike flagship store experience in New York City, like where you can kind of create your Nike by you, create your own Nikes, personalize and customize the shoe for you, or hold a locker space that's kind of tied to your Nike place, Nike ID. So I think a combination of these three is what kind of makes it truly the in-store experience truly great, is how I see it. So
I think I love that point, and I love I do think data sharing and privacy are becoming increasingly important, as we all know. But it isn't so much the fact that a retailer is taking your data as so much as how they're taking it and where they're taking it in the experience and the journey. And a simple example is what Costco is doing right now to try and crack down on fraud usage, people borrowing other people's cards to check out at the checkout experience. Everyone expects to show their card when they walk in the store. I mean, it's for members only. That's very understandable. It feels very comfortable, very natural. So beefing up the security check at that point would really not be very hard. It would not offend people. But interrupting their flow, and now they ask to see your membership card and your driver's license in some cases right before you check out. After you've got your full cart, you're standing there, you feel like an idiot. If you don't have another ID, what do? And you feel insulted, and it is a very unnatural place to add that check for personal data. And so it's when and how they implement this check, not so much the fact that they are checking your ID, that I think is the issue.
Yeah, and there's so many ways. That's a great example. And there's so many ways that stores that have that membership requirement can have a second form of validation at other interactions throughout the store and even at checkout, right? And for me, checkout would be great because I've already bought I'm about to buy everything. I spent time in the store, I'm about ready to buy it. You're kind of calling me out. You're actually not a member, we know it. But if you'd like to sign up right now, we'd love to have you be part of the family. And then, make it easy, simple, non-threatening. You could build membership with that in a very, natural, appealing, welcoming way.
Yeah.
So and the technology is there today to do it. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you can take those difficult experiences, as DeAnn mentioned it, and turn it into a positive if you handle it the right way. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, use it as a loyalty building tool, asking people to sign in, and then you have the ability to send them coupons while they're shopping, to give them a free product, to communicate back and forth with them, and to help them if they want to buy a fridge because they just didn't realize Costco sells refrigerators, and oh my God, look at the cheap price on that. That's exactly what we've been looking for. I want to buy it. So you can go ahead and buy all the other small things and then have that delivered as part of the same order, and start bringing some of that multi-channel experience into that one trip, and you're creating a customer for life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Brad, I want to come to you with the next question, and it really relates to how digital technology is transforming physical stores. again, we've all been able to cite examples of things that we have seen or experienced as consumers that are best practices. But as you look maybe across the broader retail landscape, it feels like progress is a little bit uneven, with some retailers being a best practice and things that we're proud to share, and others perhaps that are falling behind. What's your view in terms of, look across the landscape, where technology is allowing innovation into retail store experiences, and is everybody doing it well? Are there examples of good and bad? What do you think?
I'm going to focus my answer more on through the Ingenico lens and the world that we play in.
Sure.
As I had mentioned before, we see three areas: operational, digital, and human associate. And as stores of all sizes are looking to maximize those, as they determine the best ways to meet the growing requirements of the consumer, pick up at curb, pick up at a locker, order online, pick up in store, order online, deliver to home, whatever it might be. One thing we're definitely seeing trends are around consumers wanting to be able to come in, get the help they need, buy immediately, and leave the store. So and this is across all merchant types and verticals, including many quick serve restaurants. So that's why we're seeing so many pop-up kiosks. You can check out right here, not in the front of the store, in the back of the store. You can actually check out, download a QR code to show the security guard on the way out. You're not fumbling with paper. We're definitely seeing an uptick in that, and a very successful uptick, because technology is to the point now where it can be very quick and easy for a consumer to be able to check out on their own. The scanners and the way all that work together with the terminal device and the back end applications and payments are seamless now. It's easier for merchants to be able to pull together multiple parties to create a solution that works for them. Several years ago, you kind of had to work with one company to give you a lot, and you were stuck with what that one company would provide you. We're definitely seeing with some technologies that are out there and some that we're providing, enable merchants to be able to kind of pick and choose what they want, and then kind of assemble through the cloud and assemble what they're looking for a consumer experience. And for the most part, the companies that are having these dialogues with us are the ones that we see their revenue growing. The companies that are leaning more towards the status quo, you can see it, they're public companies, their revenues are running fairly flat. So I'm not saying that's the only thing, but there's definitely a driver there to not only the physical rethinking the store and how you're going to lay it out, but also how and when you're going to engage with the consumer related to the checkout itself.
Oh, I wish they would rethink the store layouts and redesign them for self-checkout, because I know, especially in the grocery experience, the queuing is getting worse, not better, because the self-checkout is really not self. It's a two-person job. It's just a matter of, is it two full people at each checkout or 1.5 people? It's not a singular experience. Yeah.
It can be, as an example, a grocery store, for an example, right? If I've got 6 kids and my shopping cart is like this, right, and I can barely move it because it's so heavy, do I really want to do self-checkout? Maybe not, right? But if I'm in a hobby store and I'm picking up a couple of models and a puzzle and some paint, then yeah, I probably do want to check out. So aligning your environment, who your customers are, and what you're selling them, you can successfully align that flow with the way you enable customers to check out, whether it's through an associate or a self-service.
That's a great example. Container Store is an example that goes with that pretty well. There's some things that they don't do very well, but there's some things they do really well. And one is they've now armed all their employees with these handheld checkout devices. So you can go through the official checkout at the front of the store. But a lot of times I watched staff go over to somebody with one item in their hand and say, hey, I can just check you out right here. And I'll email you the receipt and you can walk right out. They can check them out, like you said, at the back of the store anywhere. And giving employees that power is really not only does it make them more productive and more happy about being there, their job actually has some actual value in their minds, but they're also speeding things up for the customer and making a better experience.
Absolutely. Guys, one of the things I want to make sure we touch on before we run out of time today, because it's so much in the public discourse, is artificial intelligence or AI. Obviously, that's very much in the news in the broader context. It's come up in the entertainment industry's labor strife recently. And I know the public is probably hearing a lot about it, both in that broader context and perhaps as it specifically relates to retailing. And Sudhakar, I want to kind of bring this question to you. It feels like consumers are hearing potentially some of the exciting benefits of AI technology, as well as perhaps some of the ethical or privacy concerns related to that technology. If we could advise our colleagues across the retail ecosystem, retailers specifically, on how best to leverage that technology and to bring it to bear, hopefully in a way that serves a consumer well. What are your thoughts in terms of either the watch outs or look fors, or really kind of where to focus some of their efforts? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, listen, I think Gen AI has had so much hype recently, and like the technology is moving at such a fast pace. Like, there's no day where where I won't see LinkedIn posts. I'm sure like all of us see LinkedIn posts about new startup or one of these, whether Meta releasing Llama 2 or OpenAI kind of accelerating GPT 3.5 to 4. But I think it's still very nascent stage, and I think just given the impetus of this technology can have both on the the brand value, like the negative things that can go wrong with it the stakes are pretty high, right? So, I think if for a retail perspective, I think there are three dimensions that I would look at this at. Like one is basically strengthening your data practices, right? Like how are you being more responsible in terms of how you collect the data, how do you remove biases from the data? Because at the end of the day, AI is so dependent on the data that's being fed into. So how do you kind of invest in robust frameworks around it, and having the right data strategy, whether it's the right data collection practices of providing consumers with the right opt-in, opt-out mechanisms, conforming to all the regulatory ones like GDPR, CCPA, other set of things. The other dimension is being transparent, right? So I think whether you are using, because I'm sure in a few years, Gen will use AI and both from a operational efficiency within retail, whether figuring out how we reduce our employee workloads or make them much more efficiency, and to all the way to consumer experiences, how do you kind of make them much more personalized and stuff. But I think over the spectrum, I think it's important to be transparent and being very clear on what data is being used, how is it being used, and being able to explain that. I think that's going to be one. The third one is around the governance frameworks. It's so early, and especially I think retail has the benefit of having a wide spectrum of people, all the way from people who are working in store operations to people who are working in tech and others. How do you kind of create that governance council within, which is kind of being both the gatekeeper, at the same time also is serving as a board, which is advising on the use cases and the applicability and the ethical use of the the use cases that this technology needs to be used at. So I think that's how I would look at it. So, but I think I'm optimistic about the technology. I think, but we just need to be cautious about like how we go about it.
Awesome. So while you were sharing your thoughts, our good friend Lisa Amlani, who's a fellow top retailer influencer, dropped a question into our question box, and she asked, as we discuss AI and other technologies, some perhaps that have been used around retail for a number of years, as a group, can we give any examples of how some of the newly launched technologies can be used in assortment curation? In other words, helping retailers make better assortment decisions, perhaps more focused to a particular location or to an individual's preferences? And how can retailers do a better job of giving customers the product they want, and for their own purposes, hopefully selling that at full price, not at markdown? DeAnn, you want to perhaps take that first?
Sure. I think when it comes to technologies in retail, it's not one and done. So AI to me is a really great amalgamating tool to leverage things like computer vision and machine learning and data and sensors to bring all of that together into something meaningful. And a good example would be in a grocery store, there's a freshness issue with some produce. Past a certain point, it's going bad. When you get to that point, AI could be extremely instrumental in flagging the retail media network to signal strawberries are on sale because you want to get rid of them within the time frame that you can still sell them at full price, or for a very modest discount. And so using it for things like that, plugging AI into your local data sources, things like weather. There's a big storm coming. People are going to be stocking up on water. Let's signal the supply chain to really start bringing some more pallets of water in from the back and get that on the shelves. Let's market at a price that we know will sell. Using AI to really connect people, processes, data sources, and products is really the perfect. You're closing the square, and you're making all of that data and insights actionable to the benefit of keeping that product moving, not buying more product that you can sell, buying the right products because you're plugged into trends and what's happening in the real world. Excuse me. So that's how I see AI being the most useful.
I'll build on that thought. And one of the things that me as a former buyer is how AI can be leveraged as a tool for forecasting and inventory flow. We've obviously all lived through this period where in-stocks, supply chain issues impacted the customer experience and left some business on the table, while at the same time other retailers ended up with overstocks. And so one of the ways AI feels like it can really have a positive impact is in forecasting and planning. And that's not just during the life cycle of a product or a category, but at end of life, making sure that products are wound down, particularly seasonal products are wound down at the right time, that someone doesn't continue to order them. So effectively, that's a form of assortment curation, as well as just helping buyers make better decisions about what individual items to place in individual stores or regions or store formats. It feels like those are just a few of the assortment and curation opportunities. I want to get one more question here before we run out of time, and it came from David Walker, and he's asking about self-checkout. And we for years and years heard about how RFID was going to really radically change the shopping experience, particularly when it relates to self-checkouts. Who wants to maybe take that as perhaps our last question in terms of, do we think RFID is going to come back and perhaps have a bigger impact after all, or is that not the technology that perhaps is going to make the store experience more efficient? Who wants to take that one?
Don't all speak at once.
Yeah.
I think RFID, like all technologies, when it first comes out, everybody's thinking about all the possibilities. It's great, but then you hit the fact that it's a little bit too expensive. Now it's starting to become an economy of scale such that it's much more affordable. And now I think we also have the ancillary technologies like AI and computer vision and sensors and things that can really make this RFID beneficial. And so I think it is going to start coming into its own. It's more affordable. They have passive versions that can kind of turn themselves off and only activate when a machine wakes them up, that can last up to 2 years. And so as customers become more concerned about the authenticity of a product, as we get more entrenched in reselling and circular retail, as we start to care more about where a product came from and environmental things kick in, like for building materials, is this forest stewardship managed wood? Does this come from an FSC approved wood source? Those kinds of things are going to really give RFID some meat to work with. And I think that over the next few years, if it continues to get more affordable, then it could really be an incredibly valuable tool in some retail applications. In others, like grocery, where you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of SKUs, maybe RFID is not the best source for some of those products. So it's going to be finding the right balance between affordability and practicality.
Indeed. Well, as I watch the clock, we're going to get closer to running out of time. But I want, first of all, it's been a wonderful conversation. Team, any kind of closing thoughts on this broader topic of disruption in retail and kind of as we look forward? Anything perhaps we want to share with our audience before we end our time together?
Go ahead.
I think we are at a very interesting time right now with when it comes to like what's happening in the macro environment, but also from a tech perspective, like the disruptions that are happening, whether it's AI and others. Like I think it's going to be interesting to see how the consumer patterns that are changing and the tech come together to kind of change the retail landscape and the experiences. We transition into more of an experiential retail where like the consumer is kind of being able to get personalized experiences and like that leverage the latest and greatest in tech. So I think I'm excited to be in retail at this point of time. So
indeed, I think one of the things that led me to pursue a career in retailing was the fact that it was always changing, always dynamic, and boredom was never a problem. If you choose a career in retailing, no matter what role you play in the broader ecosystem of retailing, it's always pretty fast paced and always a challenge, and that's part of what we love about it. So
yeah,
thoughts, Brad, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to touch on your always changing comment, I guess that the one thing I'd really like to leave with the audience is technology is changing fast, and there's a lot of things coming down the pipe. And what we found is that more and more of our customers are asking us to engage in the broader conversation as they're thinking about what they're going to do next and why. Instead of coming to us with, this is what we want you to do for us, they're coming to us saying, this is what we want to solve for. Can you help us with that? Like, let's have a conversation about it. I would encourage the people participating here to reach out and talk to your technology providers, have them, look at your challenges and work through it with you, because you'll be amazed at what's out there that you may not be aware of that could rethink your thinking to end up with a better solution for what you're trying to solve for. So that's the thing I'd like to leave with the audience.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the things that comes to mind is one of the things I hear Doug McMillon talk about, the CEO of Walmart, is he views Walmart as technology enabled but people led, and I think that's a a great way to kind of think about the age that we're in is that technology is an enabler of not only efficiency, but also wonderful customer experiences, but ultimately it's humans that decide whether the business is successful or not, and whether that technology is leveraged the right way to drive a great business and a great customer experience. And so I'll close our time together like that. To everyone who has joined us today, thank you so much for attending our webinar. We have enjoyed it and found the information very insightful and informative. If you'd like to learn more about connecting with the next generation of customers, please feel free to scan the QR code on the screen and connect and follow us on LinkedIn. And with that, well, thank you for joining us today, and we will look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thanks for joining us.